Okay, let's just throw this question to you. Say you've had a heart attack, you survived a heart attack. Doctor says, take this drug, and over a 5-year period, how much extra life extension would you hope it would add over that 5 years? You can do it over whatever 20 years, but just say 5 years to start with. How much longer would you hope to live from taking that statin?
Okay, so over 5 years, then I'd say maybe a year.
Okay,
25% more.
Okay, fine. That sounds pretty good.
20% more.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The actual figure, not disputed, from industry-sponsored trials, right? 4.2 days, just over 4 days.
Is that because they haven't done it over a long enough period of time?
No, I mean, if you then extrapolate it out, if you presume the benefits are going to keep going on, you could then argue, well, over 10 years, it'll be 8 days, and over 20 years, it'll be 16 days or whatever, right? So that's the information. So the reason I'm telling you this, Steve, is that this information is important. I'm not just a doctor, I'm a potential patient. I ask myself, what would I want to know, right? I'm here to try and improve my quality of life and my health. What is important to me? What is important to patients? This information is important, especially, Steve, because it's not that I'm saying don't take statins, but a lot of people would say, okay, I'll take the drug, right? And if they don't get side effects, why not? It might be a bit of a lottery, but why not take the drug? And the people say that to me, and that's fine. And if they get side effects. But the thing that's missing, Steve, is, and this is where we come on to the question you asked me about how to prevent heart disease, is there an alternative that doesn't give me side effects, improves my quality of life, and likely is going to help stop me getting heart disease? So what is that?
Lifestyle changes. Absolutely.
So 80% of heart disease is linked to environment and lifestyle. Okay, so what is the core, most important biological phenomenon in the body that leads to heart disease, which is not disputed, but it doesn't get much of a there's no market for the message because you can't commodify this. This is an interesting thing, right? So, but it's really important information. It's called insulin resistance. Insulin is a very important hormone in the body, released by the pancreas, helps maintain blood glucose within certain ranges so our cells can function optimally. All right. Over time, if your insulin is chronically raised too high, or if your cells become resistant to them for whatever reason, that is the most important driver of the development of these so-called plaques, these furring, these blockages in the arteries. So what causes insulin resistance and how can you combat it? Or how can you prevent and potentially, stabilize and even reverse? We'll get onto reversal as well, because that's a fascinating area. Most important components, diet, okay? I would say in big figure terms, now, probably 50% of heart disease around the world can be linked to poor diet.
Okay, so let's start with diet then. I've actually got a bag of sugar that I brought with me because when I think about insulin, glucose, bad diet, the first thing my brain thinks about is sugar. So I've got this bag of sugar here that I brought with me. And I've got 2, look at us, we've written sugar on it and covered up the brand because they didn't pay us. But if there is a sugar brand that would like to do a brand deal, please get in touch. We're big fans if we need to be. What I actually would like you to show me is how much sugar do I need to function and to be healthy? Okay.
The amount of sugar that you need to function and be healthy is 0. There is no nutritional requirement whatsoever of this, what we call added sugar or table sugar. None at all.
So I don't need any?
You don't need any. And the reason for that is, very briefly, our bodies need glucose to survive, but you don't need any dietary source of glucose to survive, right? Because people go on what we call ketogenic diets and they literally eliminate all starch as well, which also contains glucose from their diet. Your body will make it itself from fat and protein. So in terms of diet, there is no value from sugar whatsoever. It can give you energy, of course, yes, but you can get energy from other things, but there's no nutritional value whatsoever. 0. So from a health perspective, there is 0 requirement for dietary sugar.
So when we say that Americans are consuming a lot of sugar every day, are we talking about added sugar?
Yeah, we're talking about, so the World Health Organization now, after I was involved in this campaign, and there was a lot of attention on it, they revised their guidelines. So they recommend a maximum limit for the average adult of actually 6 teaspoons of either, so maximum limit, okay, which you don't need it, but maximum limit, because after that, that's when the health consequences start to accumulate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, so that's the maximum daily limit.
Maximum daily limit. Okay, but just to give you an example, so one sugary drink. We don't name any brands, right? You wouldn't have to. Would often a 330 ml, let's say the most famous sugary drink in the world.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
Would have 9 teaspoons on its own.
9 teaspoons?
9 spoons in one of those, right? And that's just in the 330 ml. Imagine going to the cinema and having half a litre or whatever else, right?
Jesus.
Yeah.
So one can of beep has 9 teaspoons of sugar in.
Yes.
Which is...
Yeah, which is, so 4, yeah, absolutely.
Well above
so
the
4 grams is 1 teaspoon.
Okay, which is well above the daily recommended.
It is now,
daily
absolutely.
maximum.
One chocolate bar,
yeah,
like a standard size chocolate bar, what we grew up with, about the same.
Leave chocolate out of it.
Right? Well, listen, you can have dark chocolate. I love chocolate, right?
Yeah, dark chocolate.
For children, the US Department of Agriculture, for the average 4 to 8 year old child, think about kids as well, they're the most vulnerable to a lot of these problems of sugar. They recommend a maximum limit of 3 teaspoons. Yeah. Now, the average person in this country, in America, is consuming at least 20 teaspoons. Now, when we talk about sugar, we're talking about, the word they use is free sugars. So that means this sort of sugar added, right, to foods. But it also includes fruit juice, honey, and syrups. Same effect on your body. Whole fruit is fine, but if you think about it, a glass of orange juice, for example, would usually have the juice of 6 oranges.
Oh,
you couldn't eat 6 oranges that easily. You'd have 1 orange, for example. And there's fiber, and the fiber has a counteracting effect on terms of the way that the glucose and fructose is affected, absorbed in your body. A lot of it's to do with the rapid increase in the bloodstream of blood glucose. And that causes huge spikes in insulin. And the problem with that over time, of course, is you get chronically raised insulin and heart disease. But also, interestingly, the more rapidly you have a food that causes a glucose spike, the more quickly you're going to get a crash, because insulin goes up quite quickly and it causes it to come down, and it drives hunger.
Yeah.
So that's another problem. So the food industry, I think, knew for a long time. That's why, in America, and it may be similar here, 70% of foods purchased in the supermarket in America will have added sugar, because they knew that it increases the palatability and the consumption. Of course, they're there to sell food, not look after your health.
So you said 20 teaspoons is the average for an American?
At least 20 is probably much higher.
I'm gonna have to ask you to show us that.
Yeah.
So I can see what that looks like in a glass. It's disgusting. That's disgusting. When you see it like that,
know.
And you don't realize that you're having that much sugar in a day. But I mean, technically, that's what 2 cans of fizzy drink.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is, a lot of the sugar that's being consumed are in foods that people wouldn't think have sugar in them. They're not the usual junk food, your cakes and biscuits and whatever else. They're in things even marketed as being healthy, low-fat foods, etc., low-fat yogurts.
So could you just summarize what we have here then in these 2 glasses?
Yeah. So this is the maximum daily recommended limit by the World Health Organization of sugar consumption, after which you then start to see increases risks of disease. And this is what, at least, I think, what most people are consuming at the moment.
Are you hopeful that there's something we can do about this at a society level?
Well, I think one important step was the fact that this levy on sugary drinks definitely would have some impact, partly based upon what we learned from big tobacco. Steve, 50% of, it's interesting, crazy when you think about it now. In 1970, 50% of adults in the UK were smokers, right? We've got that down to about 17% now, but massive reduction, right? And it happened, education was important, but the real intervention that had more impact than anything else was actually taxation of cigarettes. And it had twofold effect. Of course, you make it a little bit more expensive, this with your business background, right? It's going to reduce the consumption, but it was a way of also increasing awareness that this is harmful. So I think the sugar stuff is ongoing. I think a lot of people have awareness on it. I think now, which is linked to sugar, and I've written about this, we need to treat ultra-processed food, which a lot of the ultra-processed food has added sugar, as the new tobacco, right? This is more than 50% of the calories in the UK and more than 60% of the calories in the US of people's daily consumption is coming from ultra-processed foods, essentially described as if it comes out of a packet, industrially produced, and you can read more than 5 ingredients, usually with additives and preservatives, it's ultra-processed and best avoided. And all of the research that's been done only points in one direction. And I think there are at least 32 different conditions or diseases now that are associated with the consumption of ultra-processed food. That is the major issue. So because this is a predominantly an environmental problem, right? Our food environment is saturated with this stuff. Even hospitals, Steve. I mean, the first campaign I got involved with is trying to get this stuff out of hospital. I was like, hold on, we're treating patients with obesity-related conditions, yet we're serving them junk food in hospitals. The staff, 50% of NHS staff are overweight or obese.
What's the probability that because I want to talk about ultra-processed foods as well as the sugars.
Yeah.
What's the probability that if I'm having that much sugar a day, the big glass, that I'm going to end up in your practice with some kind of heart disease?
I wouldn't be able to give you a figure, but you're definitely significantly increasing your risk.
Well, if that's the average American, then what's the average American's chance of ending up in, I guess causation needs to be established.
Yeah, of course. And it depends what else they're having as well. But it's definitely putting them at significant increased risk of type 2 diabetes. I think the figure now in America, if I'm not wrong, is that a third to a half of adult Americans now are pre-diabetic. So to answer your question in a better way, because we're already there, unfortunately, the way to understand insulin resistance on a personal level in terms of measurements, body measurements, is something called metabolic health. And there are 5 components which are very easy to measure of metabolic health, okay? It's your waist circumference, right? It's your blood triglycerides, which is a form of the cholesterol being above 1.7 millimoles, okay? It's your HDL cholesterol, the good cholesterol, being less than 1 millimole. It's being pre-diabetic, okay, having a HbA1c of more than 5.7%. Or being pre-hypertensive. So your blood pressure is above 120/80 average. If you have 3 of those that are abnormal, you have something called metabolic syndrome, puts you at the highest risk of heart disease, and at least 50%, if not more, patients admitted with heart attacks will have metabolic syndrome. But all those 5 parameters being in the normal range, in America, only 1 in 8 adults have all of those in the normal range, and only 1 in 4 people aged between 20 and 40. Think about that for a second.
So 7 out of 8
adults will have abnormal metabolic health. If we, within a year, if we just shifted a little bit people's eating habits, and let's say we eliminated ultra-processed food, we got people to eat more nuts and seeds, oily fish, whole fruit and vegetables, it's been estimated that you would halve the death rates from heart disease globally within 1 year, from 20 million to 10 million.
You'd be out of business as a heart doctor.
No, there'll still be a lot of people to treat. We've got to help the other 10 million as well, right? But I think the other thing as well is what it does, Steve, though, is it shifts the age. So instead of someone dying prematurely and having a heart attack at the age of, say, 65, they'll live to 85. So all we'll be doing as doctors is we'll be managing older people. But that's fine. We've improved longevity, we've improved quality of life as well.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.